we're going to take a couple minutes and just let folks kind of come on in and get started. You know, I wanted to lay out a few things that I would encourage as we are letting people kind of flow into the session, that you do go ahead and use the chat to do what y'all are doing and basically introduce yourself, tell, you know, like your business name, your industry, where you're from. I think really the goal, and we'll kind of dig into this, is there's been a ton of webinars where people are talking at each other. And I think that the whole point of kind of bringing this crew together, as you all know, that we love to do at the IBMF and the Jim Moran Institute, is to actually bring people together so that you can kind of discuss back and forth and learn, you know, best practices, what's going on between you all as, you know, veteran and military connected owned businesses. So few ground rules from the top, and then we're going to get into kind of what you can expect throughout the next hour here or so. And I also want to introduce the cool crew that I have with me. As most people know, I do like to kind of roll with an entourage. So we're really excited about this. This meeting is recorded. So as you can see right now, most everyone is muted. If you do have something to say or to add to the conversation here a little bit later, please use the chat, or you can raise your hand. If you are on the phone right now and you can't just hit mute, unmute, raise hand, remember you can do *6 to mute or unmute, or *9 to raise your hand. Okay, so I still see some people joining, but with that said, let's kind of get to the meat of what we're doing today. As we mentioned, there's been a lot of things going on. Any of y'all who've maybe seen the videos or emails that we've been sending, there's been a lot that's been going on the past few months. I know there's been a ton of information that's been shared with you from subject matter experts, but I think what a lot of business owners are needing and saying, and what we're getting back in feedback, is that opportunity to connect and to figure out, you know, what's going on within the world that we're now living in, within, you know, what this, I guess, the overused new normal looks like. And we really wanted to team up with our amazing friends and partners down in the sunny state of Florida, the Jim Moran Institute for Global Entrepreneurship at Florida State University, to host an opportunity, not only just a one-time opportunity, but also kind of introduce a new thing that we're going to be doing online. But this opportunity today is to really give you all the chance to connect, to talk about what are some of the things that your business and has been facing, or you've been facing over the last few months. What things or challenges are COVID caused and or aggravated? So what you'll see over this next hour is we're going to do a couple things. We're going to do a hot seat where we get to put someone on the spot and kind of talk through those things and get some live feedback from you all and your lived experiences. And Melissa will dive into what that means a little bit here later. And then we're actually going to break out into breakout rooms, so smaller groups, where we're going to break out into smaller groups so that you all can then have a chance in those smaller groups to do what you've seen in the bigger hot seat. So I know that some of y'all know each other, so I think it's going to be a great opportunity to where you can connect again. Some of you all, you know, are not as familiar with each other, so welcome to the family. All of this to say that we're really setting, you know, a lot of this up as we are kicking off a new program. It's something that we feel is very important, is to continue to connect and train and make sure that we are providing tools and resources for you all during this time. And just because we can't do it in person doesn't mean that we can't do that. So we're going to talk more about what that program is. It's going to be called R.I.S.E. Here at the end of this, but I think that what you're going to see here today is a little bit of what that's going to look like over 6 weeks in 1 hour. So imagine this, but longer, with more information, more resources, more subject matter experts, more VOBs, so that you all can make that connection. So I do want to make sure that you all understand that this is just the beginning of this kind of journey, and that we wanted to make sure that you all could kind of come in, experiment, and see what an online platform looks like for you. So that's going to be R.I.S.E. I'm going to have Melissa talk a little bit about it, as really this was kind of a brainchild that was kind of brought to the forefront from Florida State. And we always appreciate the ability of that team to kind of dream and then kind of let us work with them to kind of take something that was just an idea and then put it into practice, much like many of you have done with your small business. So it's very exciting to be able to have this opportunity. So with that said, I want to introduce Melissa Roberts. She's the managing director of the Jim Moran Institute for Global Entrepreneurship at Florida State University. She can kind of kick off and tell you a little bit about, you know, what Florida State's doing right now, what that looks like, and then kind of what that next step of this webinar is. So we're pretty excited to do that. So with that, Melissa.
Well, welcome everybody. We're so glad to have you here, and it's been a challenging time for everybody. I know we keep hearing it's unprecedented times, but it really is, and we really miss the programming aspect of what we've been able to do with our veterans. And we've touched or reached out to many of you and had connections with you all through our programs, and we miss seeing your faces. So it's so good to have you back today. But many of you may have met Dr. Randy Blass, who is our executive director at the Jim Moran Institute at Florida State University. And he is kind of the brainchild of our EBV program, a longtime friend of Mike Haney. And he wanted to kind of find a way to connect with our veterans and help in this time to pivot. So obviously, things have changed, and we're having to change business models and accommodate new technology, new ways of doing business, new safety protocols. So he came up with the idea for R.I.S E, which stands for Resilience, Innovate, Sustain, and Evaluate. And obviously, we're partnering with IBMF. It's a 6-week program, virtual bootcamp style, to help pivot your business to tackle current challenges. Some of the topics that we'll address are finances, operations, strategic planning, communications, design thinking, action planning. So it's really, and business model canvas. So it's really to help take your business to a different place than it's been, and to kind of meet that demand to pivot. So we hope that you'll be able to participate, and we'll have more discussion on that later in the webinar.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks so much. Okay, y'all. So here we go. I think that, as I mentioned at the top, there's been a lot of webinars right now. We've done a lot of them too, where we get together a big group of subject matter experts and kind of talk at folks for about an hour. I think the big rub of this is that, you guys have learned a lot as we've kind of moved through the few months. You guys yourselves have applied for the PPP, have gotten it, have maybe done an EIDL loan, have faced the things that you're facing with your teams and how to stay kind of afloat during all this. So what we want to do is actually now give that a space and a structure so that we can then have these peer-to-peer conversations with each other to kind of learn from what it is. The biggest thing that I want to pull from this is, just like we did with our Taking Care of Business during the pandemic series, is we're going to pull the common threads that we're hearing. So if you're having certain challenges that you want to make sure address, that you dig into, whatnot, we're going to be pulling those common threads that we're hearing and hosting another webinar next week so that you all can hear from not only subject matter experts, but a curated panel of veteran-owned businesses that have already been through that can then talk about their experience as we go forward. Furthermore, as Melissa puts, or as the Florida State, Melissa, Lindsay, Nicolette, Calvin, and us all work together on the fine tunings of everything that will be packed into that 6-week R.I.S E agenda. Definitely being able to understand some of these things that are at top of mind as we put that together, just like how we personalize and curate that EDGE agenda every single year, and we can then personalize and curate those agendas as we move forward. So here's kind of the layout. Melissa is going to kick off what we're going to call the hot seat. And I know that she's already had a couple things planned for that, but she's going to kick off what we're going to do as a hot seat. And I'm going to let her kind of explain that. From there, we're going to do the breakout rooms. It looks like we're going to have about 4 breakout rooms that we're going to then take kind of a little bit of that structure and go into a peer-to-peer feedback where you all will be able to share with each other. And the moderators of each of those rooms will be me, Melissa Bird, Melissa Roberts, and I think Lindsay Boomer at that point, so that then we can kind of lead y'all through that little journey. Then we'll come back here, talk about common themes, threads, what's next. And from there, you'll get a follow-up email after this with the recording and with curated resources that will tackle some of those common themes. So I'm going to kick it back over to Melissa so that she can get the party started.
Sure. So I know this was mentioned in the email that was sent out, and you guys replied whether you were comfortable being on the hot seat. So what we want to do here is kind of give you an opportunity to talk about your business. Like I said before, this has been a prime opportunity in life to pivot and innovate, and I think that's exciting. There's some excitement in there. So with that, we're going to have one or two people talk about the challenges and opportunities that they've faced in their business, and whether or not they've been aggravated by COVID, and some of the things that they've done to kind of mitigate that. So we're going to start with Delisa Clift. She is the Chief Operations Officer of Strategic Biz Solutions Unlimited. I met Delisa at VWise. She has been through our EBV Families program as well at FSU, and she's just an inspiration to us all. So we'll get started with you, Delisa.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Delisa Clift, and I'm with Strategic Biz Solutions Unlimited. We're based here in Hinesville, Georgia. If you're familiar with the Fort Stewart area, this is where we are. And what we do, we provide small business coaching and consulting to other small businesses within our industry. We work with local government, which we actually do a lot of small business workshops and trainings for those local government agencies. And what we found most all during this particular process is that a lot of the workshops that we conduct are face-to-face, and we can't do that anymore. You know, at one point, we were able to go into the local city hall and meet in their classrooms and provide training for small businesses. We weren't able to do that. And so what we had to do, we had to sit back and think, how can we still provide a good quality service to the small businesses in our area? And we did it through what we call an easy step, and that's EASY. We had to evaluate where we are at this particular time. Look at what we were doing in 2019, and even in January and February before the pandemic hit. Evaluate the processes and systems that we had in place that allowed us to conduct those workshops and to be a resource for other small businesses here in our area. And then we had to do access the resources, access the opportunities that were provided by organizations like VWise, like the Jim Moran Institute. Be able to tap into those resources and put those into good practice for ourselves. And so we did that. And from that evaluating and accessing, we created a strategic plan. And that strategic plan allowed us to step into a place where we're doing virtual trainings now. We're using platforms like Zoom, like Teams, Microsoft Teams, to actually get the same information out there for our clients. But do as many people show up for those workshops? No, they don't. Do we feel like they're of as much quality as the ones were in face-to-face? We feel like we still provide a good quality product. However, there's nothing more important than that physical touch, you know, being face-to-face with people. So that made us yield. It made us yield to say, okay, we can live in the space where we are right now, and we can do the Zoom meetings. We can do the Zoom one-on-one coaching and technical training services. But we know that this is going to be something that we won't always be in this space. So again, we're trying to use the easy method, evaluate where we were, access the resources and the opportunities that were provided from training and other resource packages like the monies from PPP, the monies from the EIDL loan, and then strategically plan how we're putting that in place. And then to yield and to take time to step back and just breathe. And so that's where we are.
Hey, great, Delisa. Thank you so much for sharing your journey so far. I think we have time for one more little hot seat recap. So I'm going to choose Logan Bonney. He is the CEO of Anything But Beer, and he'll talk about his journey. Once he unmutes.
There we go. Can you hear me? All right. So I have a brewery. We opened in 2017, and then this February we opened a restaurant. So great timing. I think the challenges were, well, shutting down the restaurant. But this kind of created an opportunity to slow down for us and really analyze what are we doing and focused on business fundamentals. At the end of the day, everything was a slowdown, and we had to take that opportunity to restructure and make sure that what we're doing is good and okay, and is going to allow us to survive and prepare us for when things reopen. There's two kinds of businesses that are going through this. There's businesses that aren't going to make it through, and people who are taking the time to look at their business and analyze what should they do and what does the future holds. And this has actually been really, it's terrible to say, but really helpful for us to slow down and make those changes that we need to, and look at the fundamentals of our business and work on the details and make sure what we're doing is what's needed. And also take the time to do market research, because the core of your business is your consumer, and you need to make sure that you're meeting your consumers' needs. Consumers' needs are changing every day as we go through this crisis, and it is critical that the services or products you're providing are still relevant and helpful to your consumers. So taking the time to go back to your market research, talk to people, and make sure that you're meeting their needs of the utmost importance. And this has kind of given us the time to do that and talk to people directly and make sure we're on the right track.
Okay, well, thank you, Logan. I appreciate your.
Oh,
sorry, I couldn't tell if you were still on. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so guys, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to go into breakouts. Melissa Bird's handling the big breakout. Melissa, if you want to wave. Here's how I see this laid out, because here's how I want to do this from here. I want to get through a few businesses. We're going to break out for about 30 minutes at this point, right? About 30 minutes. We're going to get through a few businesses. What I want to see is just how Logan and Alyssa kind of presented, hey, this is what's happened in the last few months. Then here's the rub of it. Then your peers are going to be able to ask a couple clarifying questions just to make sure they understand. Like, hey, Daniel Shrub, I'm going to use you as an example just to put you on point, because I've been following you guys on social media. Hi, I'm Daniel Shrub. I own Popcorn Friday. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. My kid made a TikTok and has now gone viral several times on TikTok, which has led us to have explosive growth and shipping stuff all over the country, and world, including to Dubai, where someone literally paid more for shipping than the popcorn. And now we're experiencing, and I have no idea, so now I'm assigning a problem. Now we're experiencing growing pains. How do we make sure that we do this in a COVID environment? How do I make sure that we stay relevant on our viral marketing? How to make sure that this great expansion area that I just bought is going to stay relevant as we continue to go forward. All of that I made up in terms of problems. Everything else is real. He really did go viral on TikTok with 1 million views. And so now I want a couple of people that have lived through a similar experience, massive growth, etc., lived through that, to give a couple minutes of feedback about, hey, I'm Stephen Robbins. You know what, Daniel, I've also had that exact issue, not the viral on TikTok, but we had explosive growth as well. Let me tell you about some of the things that we've dealt with. We'll have a few minutes to do feedback, and then we're gonna all, as moderators, be helping kind of through those conversations. Like I said, I want to feature a few of your businesses, make sure that you make the connections. If you have a good tip or resource, make sure you're sharing that in your breakouts. Then we're going to come back here, talk about some of the great things that we learned, some of the resources that we shared. And then as we start to see common themes pop up, we're going to make sure that next week we get together a group of subject matter experts so you can make sure that you're sharing. So guys, real excited about this. When we do this though, you're not selling. So you're not saying, hey, you know what? Great that you're talking about marketing. I'm a marketing company. Let me tell you all about my company. That's not what we're doing. You can say, would love to connect after, but you're not going to sell. And if you do something like that, do not get offended when me or any of the other moderators say, it's been so great, but I'm going to put you back on mute so we can get back to the sharing of shared experiences. So I've done it from the main stage. I'll do it in a breakout session. So here we go. Melissa, if you will pop us into breakouts, I will see everyone back here in about 30.
So as everyone's starting to come back and join in, we will get Misty back in here too. It doesn't shock me if she is the last group to come in, because there are some chatty folks in that group, and I heard that there was some really great conversation going on. I know we had a great conversation in our particular breakout as well. Melissa, I don't know if you have anything to share particularly. We can certainly wait for everyone else to join back in, but I really feel as though this was a great opportunity. So thank you for showing us, you know, the hot seat potential and how, you know, we all really do need to rely on each other and depend on each other to get through and learn best practices from one another, and you know, take lessons learned from one another in order to make our business thrive during whatever might be coming.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Melissa. I see that everyone's kind of joining back in here. I do want to kind of take a quick second. I know that we are right up. We have 5 minutes left. So one, I guess if each of the moderators has like one thing that kind of stuck out to them from this that we can share. I know that just for my group, we talked a lot about the importance of LinkedIn. So how are we making connections in this world that just has virtual connections at this point? So definitely, and how do we hire and how do we do all these things? So we're definitely going to be looking at how do we market and break through the noise in this time, and then how can we use tools like LinkedIn to help us kind of break through all that during this time as well. So that was one huge thing that our group talked about. So Melissa Bird, do you want to?
Sure. We had a handful of different points, but I think one thing that I've learned from each of the three groups that presented about their business was that they made changes on the fly. You know, they took what was thrown at them and, you know, internalized it, dealt with it however you needed to deal with it, but then moved on and let it be a lesson learned. And I think that's a big key, is not getting stuck in where you want to be, how you've done things, but being receptive to flexibility and, you know, changing as the market dictates, because as much as you're in control of your business, you're not in control of your business.
Thank you so much. Melissa Roberts.
So I think the biggest thing we kind of talked about was staying connected to your customer during these largely virtual times, and you know, beefing up your social media presence, your web presence, and finding a way to stay connected even though you can't meet with people face to face. And another thing I thought was really interesting is just talking about confidence and having to reach out. And if you're not being able to bring in your consumers through your traditional channels, not being afraid to you know, be rejected and be told no, but just, you know, having that confidence to reach out and to try to make new inroads.
Thank you. And Lindsay Boomer.
Hey, so our room, we really talked about a lot of the challenges that we're facing, and a couple that came up is, you know, related to, you know, limitations in terms of manufacturing when people who you rely on are no longer able to help you get your product or service that you need to get through. And then on top of that is with customers that can't or necessarily don't think they can afford the product or service that you have, and maybe pivoting your, you know, marketing strategy, how you communicate, and how I liked the way that one person in our group said, you know, mitigating the risk associated with, or at least getting the perception out there to your customers that you are helping mitigate their risk in signing up for your product or service. But one thing that actually two other things that I wanted to hit on is we had a couple people who, mentioned their pivoting strategies in this downtime. It gave a lot of people opportunity to kind of rethink and restructure, which is why we're here and why we're doing this program, is to take those initial ideas and then take them further, implement them, and help grow and sustain the businesses during this time. And then secondly, just making the connections. Even in our small group, we had, great ideas come from others to, people who have been in business for a while, and just having that kind of epiphany, like, I hadn't thought about that. That's a great idea. And I love seeing that. I think that's what the program is all about. We can do it virtually, even though we're not in a classroom, but that's all we got.
So I know we got like 60 seconds to kind of wrap up, but we're not going to like just hang up on you, don't worry. Two things. One, make sure that you join us for next week. I think we have a lot of great items that we can kind of go through in terms of what kind of challenges we have, from social media to staying connected, sales in a virtual environment. I think that's going to be a huge one, etc. I think what we can do is we'll definitely get a panel of subject matter experts, VOBs. If I can see just a show of heads real quick, do people like breaking out? If we did a whole panel instead of sitting through an hour panel of a few different things, if you really want to tackle marketing for that hour, would you prefer to break out, or would you prefer, yes? Shaking heads, lots of
thumbs up reaction.
So I love that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to assign a few topics, I think, right off the top of some of those common threads that we saw throughout the things. We're going to basically get on, do an hour, and have breakout sessions where you can break out with VOBs and subject matter experts to talk about some of these top challenges and connect with each other. That's next week, but that's just a taste of what you would get over 6 weeks with R.I.S E. So I do want to push, and we'll share the link in the chat, that you can apply now to R.I.S E. R.I.S E is a free 6-week program. If you're a graduate of any of our programs, you're basically eligible for it. You have to be an established business, but it sounds like most of you all are. But it's 6 weeks to work through all the topics that we're talking about here. So as opposed to just a 1-hour webinar, you actually have 6 weeks of bonding with the other graduates and VOBs in your class, as well as the subject matter experts, as well as a bevy of information that we have curated for established companies to help you pivot during this time. So I really want to make sure that you all know that that's available to you all as well, so that we can continue to serve you. That program also allows you to stay eligible for any of the other programs that you would like to apply for later in life through the IBMF. So from here, join next week, register for next week, register for R.I.S E if you think that that's something that can really help your business as you push forward. You will also be getting a wrap-up email from this team that will have this recorded session, as well as a couple of curated resources that we would encourage you all to check out from there, and then the information of how to register for both the webinar and, of course, the program. So with that, I always want to say it's really great to see everyone and see all your beautiful faces, and it's awesome to be able to connect with you. And I look forward to seeing this crew and more next week, and I look forward to having you all be a part of the program as we move forward. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope everyone does well. Thank you.
Thank you.